Just over the sea, our northern European neighbours are some of the most successful democracies in the world. I'm here tonight at the Scottish Parliament, where a group of people are debating, should Scotland's future be Nordic?
Well, we decided to ask 4 MSPs to start off with from the 4 main political parties to try and get a sense of what they could see in the Nordic model for them. And it really was quite astonishing. We didn't choreograph them, and they came up with quite different points. John Park from Labour was very interested in social partnership. All the Scandinavian countries have had a situation where the employers and the unions have had a contract, in Sweden's case, for something like 60 years. It stopped them having strikes. It stopped them having us and them. It stopped them having the kind of bitter industrial relations that Britain has had. And that was his particular contribution. Alistair Allen from the SNP, he was interested in the fact, obviously, they're small independent countries. And his point was, none of the things they've achieved could be achieved by Scotland because it doesn't have the levers of control. It can't change taxation. It can't change benefits policy. It can't change immigration policy. And these things, he said, were the reason that the Scandinavians were as they are. Jamie Stone for the Lib Dems had an experience of being a fish gutter in the Faroe Islands. This experience allowed him to see a better health service, better communications between islands. He was aghast at how expensive the ferry fares were, and that's with road equivalent tariff. In the Faroes, you pay practically nothing to get about.
So what makes Scotland different? And should we look to the Nordic model for future?
Well, I think one of the encouraging things is the way in which social cohesion and social justice tends to characterise societies in Scandinavia. But probably the gains have not been as far-reaching in terms of social mobility in this country that we would have hoped for. And so in these tougher times, it probably is the right moment to go and really dig down a bit deeper as to what is it that these societies have to perhaps teach us.
I think that there's a degree of energy and a degree of democracy, which is something that's built from the bottom up in each of these countries. The idea that you have a democracy of people who make decisions at the most local levels, and it turns into a parliament that has to respect what people have and their diversity, is something which Scotland could desperately do with just now.
Well, I hope we can bring together some different communities of interest, perhaps on a virtual basis, that let people who have a shared interest talk together. There was lots of us who were interested in, parental leave. There were other people who were interested in how you make the labour market work better. There were other people who were interested in the future of local government. People talked a lot about empowering really fragile communities. So maybe we could bring people together, go on some learning journeys to reflect on what might be valuable to bring back into the Scottish context.
I was in Finland for the Scottish Government's Prisons Commission, and it was quite a revelation. They were able to look at their prison population and decide that because the imprisonment rate had no relationship to the crime rate, they could probably do something about letting people out of jail because it wasn't making a huge difference.
What was the really encouraging thing about the meeting we had was just the level of expertise in the room from people from Nordic countries who wanted to share with us in Scotland.
Ted Brocklebank for the Conservatives, he was very interesting because now he has made documentaries about every aspect of Nordic culture. He was a great fan, I think, of the Nordic nations. He spent enough time there to begin to wonder about whether if you try to control aspects of the economy, you start to control people. You start to want to manage everything about the way people think and behave. And his concern is one that many of the Swedish people present expressed, which is that there is just too much conformity in some of the Nordic nations. And actually they love the aspects of freedom of expression and the slight wildness really that the Scots have.
We should be sitting in on what they're doing, but also we should learn from the partners that we have in the European Union at the present time, with the intent of making sure that we talk to them, we find out from them, and we try to get them to see some of the strengths of Scotland.
So is Scotland's future Nordic?
And it strikes me that the answers to a lot of the problems that we have here are lying in countries that we have for some reason lost all interest in, countries that are just 100 miles away in some instances, and countries who are the most successful democracies on the planet. They're next door and we know nothing about them. In almost every count, whether it's health, education, kindergarten, you name it, they are doing better than we are, and we're not interested. So the question is why? And if we bring those examples here, is anyone interested? And the answer was, yes, they were.
Certainly, and I think the answer is that if we have more dialogue over particular subjects, such as renewable energy, such as oil, such as fish, such as the way in which we organise society at the most local level, there's a lot for Scotland and Norway to talk about together.
I think one of the encouraging things about the meeting was that there were people from all political persuasions, and most importantly of no political persuasion, who were simply interested in sharing best practice, understanding a part of the world that is geographically quite close to us, but perhaps we don't know as much about as we should. So I think there was a real momentum, as I say, from people of kind of fixed political views and those of no political views to work and learn and journey together to understand what might be possible here.